Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Heal and Shift, a podcast to really get behind the process of healing in thought leaders and expert guides, and to understand the fruits of their labour once their healed version is expressed more fully into the world. I'm your host, Sunita Passi, and today I'm delighted to introduce you to Brent Bruning. I hope I've said that right, Brent, an expert in transformation. Working with hand analysis, a system that reads you. This is based on a simple notion that similar people with similar lives have similar hands. And what people don't know is how accurate this is. So whatever pattern you have in your hands that is in common with another, it's exactly the life pattern you share with another person. Brent sees this as an extraordinary map and is truly inspired when he's able to see what fulfills you, what triggers you, even your greatest fear, and helping you turn those blocked feelings into treasure, and for you to know yourself better and become fully who you are. So welcome, Brent. And delighted to be speaking to you today. So tell us a bit about yourself and the catalyst for following this path.
Wow, that's a great question. It's a deep question. I'm coming from traditionally a military background. My father was a colonel, my sister's a diplomat, and that has nothing to do with me, right? So I broke away from that to come to Switzerland, and for 20 years I was working as a consultant for the top banks here. I was an engineer, right? So a software engineer. So what they would do is they would throw, the software across the wall, and we had to figure this out. And this is 20 years of practice, right? It's like a UFO landing in front of your yard, and you got to figure out how to fly the thing, right? No instructions. And so my brain has been trained for 20 years of reverse engineering. And about 14 years ago, I was on a whim. Every time I went on vacation, I would get my hands read or get tarot cards. I just thought that was a cool thing to do, because when you're on vacation, you have like this bigger question than you do when you're like dealing with normal reality. So I was on like in Bali and then, and Canary Islands. And in both cases, just back to back, I ran into a phenomenal hand reader. It was like again and again, and they did a really good job. They were able to guess when I moved to Europe, and they were able to guess how many sisters and brothers I had, and I was an engineer and my relationship style. And I was like, okay, I get that they may have done that with intuition. Of course, one of them had tarot cards, but at the same time, I was reading twins separated from birth who had a life pattern. And there's been a lot of documentaries about this since the 60s. They've recognized that, these twins, that when they find each other after, and they look up the adoption papers, they realize that first, not only do they have a brother, but it's a, fraternal twin, and they share a remarkable life. At the time I was reading the twins, Jim Springer and Jim Lewis, and they found each other after 39 years, and they lived the same life. They drove the same model of Chevrolet. They held jobs in law enforcement. They liked stock car racing. They had woodsheds behind their houses. So they made toys, like they need to tinker all the time. And they married a woman named Linda. And then they divorced her at the same time and remarried another woman named Betty. And both their sons were named James Allen. Mm-hmm. Right. So what is that? Right. Mm-hmm. So, obviously there's a life pattern. That was what the whole twin separated from birth was trying to establish, that we are in a life pattern. And whether you have a twin to compare or not, you are in a life pattern. In other words, there's a biological preference that has you almost driven towards certain experiences or tolerances. So, as they say, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. I come back to Switzerland, where I'm now native, and I just got really lucky. There was a man who has read 70,000 hands. So it's like, imagine this session for 2 hours, right? And you're telling me your whole life story. Now multiply that by 70,000. Right. And he already had a fundamental notion, borrowing from everything he could study around, palmistry is the traditional way, but also fingerprints. He had come to a conclusion that fingerprints had a role. Now, nothing had ever been written about fingerprints. You look up any palmistry book, you don't see anything about fingerprints. And this was something that was quite in a pioneering stage over the last 100 years. Gettings wrote about this, and they were realizing that it has something to do with our behavioral traits. We don't know what, but it has something. When you organize people with a bunch of circles all over their fingers, they're a lot more compulsive and driven. And then you take all the ones with waves everywhere, they're a lot more social and vulnerable. And so, and there's other fingerprint patterns. There's about 16 different ones that you can start to, create a generalization. But he was coming to this idea that when you organize people by hands, you start to recognize that they have a similar life pattern. This is very easy to see. I mean, it's not something for you to believe. You already know it, right? Just take a bunch of Dalmatians and then Chihuahuas and then Great Danes. You'll start to realize that these are the same, they're dogs, but they're different breeds, right? Now, we don't like calling us breeds. We as human beings, we are special, right?
Yes.
We're not breeds, and especially after what happened in World War II, we don't even talk about categorization. That said, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. There's something really powerful in self-realization when you understand that you can organize people by hands, and you can see that similar people with similar hands have similar life patterns. So Richard, knowing this, came to this idea that he was failing, by the way. He was failing all over the place with modern literature around palmistry. It's kind of like, you can imagine, if I tell you something and then you tell someone else and you tell somebody else, and that's palmistry. They hadn't really developed from direct experience. They were, researching, this is the theory from everyone else, right? But they hadn't really had an on the ground experience, right?
Very technical. So without that practical element, which
right.
is
wasn't real, right? And so he was trying to make it real, and he was getting a pie on his face every time it was. And you don't have to fail but more than 2 or 3 times to realize this isn't the route I want to go, right? When you're trying to apply these what is read in these palmistry texts. And so he's going, okay, that we can just leave be. This part, this is valid. All right, it's valid 30 times in a row. All right, this I can hang my hat on, right? And so, you're looking at different lines. And so ultimately, he came to this really cool idea when he was researching fingerprints, that the fingerprints have a role in being able to realize your life pattern. And so he, at that point, I think he had 7,000 people. Right, that's a good sample size.
That's a good
500 is considered by modern psychology a good sample size. He had 7,000, and he organizes them all by the different whorls. He gets the whorls on the right ring finger and the ones on the index finger, and all the ones on the right ring finger, they all were artists. Bang, right? And then all the ones that it had something completely opposite, like an arch, which is nothing. It's like the opposite of a circle. It's just nothing. Then all those people were shy.
Yeah.
They hated to be on stage, and they were very conforming. And so he was using the same principles that Aristotle wrote. Just look it up online. Aristotle was showing that this model of how, in a very poetic way, of how the hand shows different types of personality. He was saying that the index finger that you direct belongs to Zeus or Jupiter, the directing god, right? And he was saying, well, okay, then the ring finger where you put your sparkly ring, that is Apollo, where you need recognition, right? Now, so at this point, Richard had seen this model, played over and over in all the palmistry texts, and it goes back 5,000 years. Aristotle was saying this is an ancient system. And so he looks at this and goes, well, maybe the fingerprints have something to do with that too. And then he realized, oh my God, all these people that are saying, this is my life purpose. This is an area where I feel is something I feel alive. I feel like somehow this is something in my core that every time I experience this is something that I feel where my life comes alive. It's kind of like NZT from Limitless, the movie. They come alive in that moment and they're asleep the rest of the time. So what is that? And so he was realizing that some people come alive in different experiences, and other people, and some people fall asleep in others. And you can, this is very biological. You can look at, like, in Switzerland, you go to an Italian restaurant, and I love ravioli. I will never not order ravioli, right? And now look over to the right, and they're Swiss people, so you have to excuse them, but they order freaking asparagus. It's so wrong. That should not be allowed. Okay. But they do it, right? And so there's some kind of biological thing for them that says, I'm going to go to an Italian restaurant and ignore everything that's I'm yummy on Italian. I'm just going to get asparagus, right? Yes. So consider that metaphor for the fingerprints. You have a biological urge for certain experiences, and they drive you to live a life you love. And this is great psychotherapy.
Oh, it's amazing. Well, I just to share, I'm not sure if how much you know about Ayurveda. So Ayurveda, I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner, and
a lot of understanding.
Our diagnostic tool is based on the body types, on the doshas. So there's 3 specific ones, but actually you can be a mixture of 2. You can be Tri-Dosha. You can be predominant in one rather than the other.
Can you stop just for a little bit and just explain that? Just start with the 3 so we can kind of maybe relate the systems.
So we have 3 specific body types in Ayurveda, and they're actually based on the energies, on all of the elements within us. So we've got all the great elements around us. We have space, we have air, we have fire, water, earth, and all of those elements are embodied within us as well, and completely individually in all of us, completely unique. It's a completely unique blueprint. So we're all, when we look at it from that diagnostic tool, as it were, we're all completely different, because the element of space in you is different to the amount of space in me. The amount of fire in you is different to the amount of fire in me.
Right,
etc., etc. And so these form our constitution, our actual constitution, and this, our constitution it's your mind body type, you can say, it's the qualities of your mind, it's the qualities of your body, but also on a very ethereal level as well, the way that you sort of feel about things and what feels right or feels good. And I think that's the bit that I relate to what you're saying now, is that there's certain drivers in us, that will lead us to certain things that we just get so fired up about and excited about, and then other things just absolutely send us to sleep. And it's this journey, I guess it's this journey. Well, we're both sort of on that path of unlocking people's potential, in that way. And but on a very practical level, when you're talking to someone about this, about hand analysis, and they're completely like a lay person, it's the first time they've come across it, first time they've heard about it as a tool. What are the benefits? What would you say to that person? How does it benefit their life that they should even bother having an analysis and diving deeper into this?
Well, I mean, you've said it already, right? You've said it many times that you're giving a language to somebody's experience, right? And you're able to identify different tolerance levels for, using a language of fire, air, water, but you can actually see analogs to, what they should be eating and what they should be, what type of relationships that they can be exploring, and as well how to recognize who they're meant to be in this life. Now, everybody, let's go back to when I was a software engineer, right? I like being a software engineer. There's no question. I was doing in software robotics, right? So I was managing a team of 14 engineers, and I was the head architect. I like that until I totally didn't.
Yeah,
right?
and I can't see you not signing up for something you wouldn't like. You don't come across as that sort of person.
Sure, right, right.
Yeah.
So, but there was a point where there was a part of me that felt that, as much a brainiac that is, right, that there was still a part of me that felt I wasn't soul fulfilled, right? That was a mental or ego fulfillment, or what you would consider something that would give you personal satisfaction, but not soul satisfaction. Now, there's different languages for those two arenas, right? So you might be looking at there going, I am soul satisfied and having a dozen relationships, or having one relationship, or being there as a parent to my child. That gives me soul satisfaction. It's independent somehow to being somebody who is good at being an engineer, right? And no matter how many days I spend doing something I'm good at, it may not give me soul satisfaction. So, big aha benefit for a hand analysis is first to recognize what it is that who you are from researching 500,000 people's hands, right? It's not just a small sample set. I'm talking 500,000 people. And you take that group and go, people with your hands like this, check it out. It's worth a go. And I guarantee you, every time you get a hand analysis, it's not broadcast news. Yeah. You already came to that view. And like, let's say, wow, I look at your hands and you say, you are really good at solving problems, and you have a really strong pinky, which means that you're very clever, you connect ideas, and so you're a solution provider. Is that going to give you soul satisfaction? If I look at the rest of your hands and I see you have a mentor with love everywhere, and you're here to provide an environment in this lifetime of love, intimacy, trust, and vulnerability. There's two different realms, right? They're completely two different languages.
Totally.
So I'm putting a language, and that language, but you can feel it. So when you go through a 2-hour hand analysis, I'm taking you through the architecture, every level of your life, and I'm telling you what you are, the architecture of your life pattern. Now, some people got this a little bit backwards, okay? When I'm reading your hands, I'm not just reading you. I am reading your life. That's a big concept, right?
Yeah, that's huge.
You would think, well, how is that possible, right? Well, and so I'm leading to why this is such a big benefit, and why everyone should get a hand analysis, is that when I'm reading your hands, I'm reading the perspective of your sensory cortex, right? And I can share a little bit about how this scientifically works, right? But the sensory cortex is like broadcast through your whole body, but it is 100 times broadcast through your hands, which means your reality, including this episode, including you sitting in the chair and feeling the weight of the chair, including having the words broadcast with a feeling. That's the sensory cortex. Imagine a life without feeling, right? And your hands have the highest amount of feeling. In other words, if feeling is consciousness, in other words, how do you imagine being conscious of something that you don't feel? And so what you're seeing is a whole map, the architecture of your consciousness. Now that's a really out there idea, but just follow me through here. Sensory cortex is in your hands. Your hands show feeling. Feeling is one-on-one to consciousness. And the highest amount of density is in your hands. So I'm showing the architecture. And since the time of the Greeks, they've known that different areas of what you're conscious of is in different areas of the hand. So I'm showing the different levels. If you use your language, the Pitta energy and Vata energy, I'm seeing all of those in the hand. And I can say, some people love paying their taxes.
Yeah.
They love doing business and they love making things correct. I've read the hands of Keira Knightley. She's a quite respected woman. She plays Mrs. Correct in every episode. She's playing herself, right?
Yes.
But she also draws a paycheck. She's a multimillionaire and she has a pension plan. She has her life completely organized, straight up. Some people, they can't even imagine past next week, right? And those people have a different fingerprint pattern than Keira. They have, instead of a circle on their middle finger, they have nothing there. Okay. Is that useful to know?
Wow, that's huge. That's really because then with the information you can start to work with it and you can start to move yourself forward. And I just wanted to align this again to another concept in Ayurveda. So you're talking about the soul, and this is really connecting with yourself at that level. And in Ayurveda, we use the word Atma. Atma is your soul. So it's your, it's ultimately sort of all the healing tools within the Ayurvedic system are to take you back to that place and nourish that aspect of you. And we have a concept that actually I talked about body type dosha. You actually have two, because you have your Prakruti, which is genetic, how you are when you're born, your blueprint, you can say.
Beautiful.
When you're born, and then
you have a language. You call that what?
Prakruti. Yeah, and then you have your Vikruti, which is kind of how you show up today. And if the two are very separate from each other, that's where we sort of say that disharmony, that disharmony is. So maybe that shows up as illness in the body. Maybe that shows up as not a very happy life, because you're not aligned again to that aspect of yourself that is the truest aspect of who you are. So we're talking about that sort of the same, that ultimately Keira is aligned to that aspect of herself, which shows, and she's in complete flow, and hence, a life well lived and well organized. And if I was to kind of sum up exactly what you've just shared, there's a huge benefit that
right. You can also look at the fingerprints and the hand, right? Following what you just said, right? You talk to Rika, and what was the second one?
Vikruti. Vikruti is your
like
how
what
you
make
show
of
up
it,
today.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
So like trees have rings, right? All right. So the fingerprints are the inner circle ring because they were developed at 7 weeks as a fetus, right? So if you look at, when does consciousness enter the body? 7 weeks.
Yeah.
If there seems to be a scientific and spiritual agreement that consciousness starts at 7 weeks. You cannot abort a baby after that. right? That seems to be politically
Correct.
correct. So what's happening? Why not, right? Because the baby's not showing conscious movement. It's just hanging out there swimming in the placenta, right?
Yeah.
And so if you look there, I'll share this because it's worth
Right.
having a look here. So your base is reptilian brain. If you remember what a fetus looks like at 7 weeks, right? It's just that. And you don't have skin. You're like an ectoplasm, right? So there's anything that happens here, your hand, you have nothing what is called a reptilian brain or the fish area, and all you have is a fin. So this is the instinctive side, right? Or the unconscious side. It's just biologically driven, as well as subconscious. Subconscious is when you're dreaming. And then at 7 to 12 weeks, the most phenomenal thing happens. The limbic brain is developed, the emotional, the feeling. And remember, feeling is consciousness. And the limbic brain develops, and what do you get? You get the separation of this into fingers, and you get these balls on all of the fingertips. And if it's a big ball, what is that? Why is this ball bigger than that one? What you're seeing is that this person is really turned on by this area. If you slice that open, it's got stem cells. What is stem cells? It's created through the release of DMT, serotonin, dopamine. And what is that? It's saying, oh my God, I need to grow in this area. I love it. And it's not an event. It's not an event. It stays for 4 months. And you're going, for the love of God, make this my life. I am meant to be creative. And since the time of the Greeks, they have identified this area as creativity. This is power. This is responsibility. This is communication. This is about holding, having a family. This is an epigenetic pattern in place, meaning that you have inherited this. So you're born into a biological river. You have no choice. Your great-grandparents are going down this road, and then that stays, and ultimately you get a fingerprint. You get a biological map, and if it's a big ball, you get a circle. If you don't get...
That's amazing. Look at that. That's incredible. And then you've got the elements coming in as well, and how that that translates. So I'd imagine there's quite a bit of overlap. And this is so I'm born UK to Indian parents, and so India being a beautiful spiritual land where it's very normal to actually go and see a palmist, or go and have your cards read, or go to the temple and meditate with different crystals and different stones, and it's all very much embedded into the culture. And so palmistry we would consider a spiritual experience. It's a way for us to connect with wisdom, with truth within us. So as I listen to you, I'm hearing you take us on a similar path with hand analysis. Do you consider it to be a way to seek spirituality?
Is it a way to see spirituality?
Seek.
Right. So obviously, when I'm reading the fingerprints, you're nailing it. Right. So when I'm reading people's fingerprints, I'm reading their life purpose, as well as what they're going to struggle over a lifetime. Right. So if you consider that map that I just showed you, right, and you go, let's just back up a little bit. Maybe it's easier to just show you.
Mm-hmm.
So that, if you remember that ball, let's just go over here. That ball,
Mm-hmm.
wherever that is, creates a surge of serotonin and dopamine for that person.
Mm.
Now, these are real people's fingerprints. I'm very proud to say, for example, I got Kira, I got Richard Branson, over the publicists, Elvis Presley, and all these are real people's fingerprints. And wherever that circle is, it might be here on the directing finger. You're meant to be on a spiritual path for power. Some people don't have that, right? Maybe they have a circle on their right ring finger. Maybe they're artists. Maybe that circle is on their left hand instead of their right hand. So it's not about public creativity, public art, public applause. But the left hand is the quantum world. Just think about it. Right hand is left brain, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And the left hand is right brain. What is the right brain? It's the quantum world. It's the feeling world. It's the creative world. The right hand is more linear, specific.
Yeah.
Newtonian world, right?
Yeah.
So everything that you see here on the right hand is related to a person's path toward the outer world that is very measurable. And everything that you see here is what is the man or woman's natural reward system for a life that's quite inward. This is very easy to see. You can just look at this. Look at this. This is a map, right? So just imagine if I was to put all your fingerprints into, you have five fingers on both hands, and I just put it. This is your right hand. This is your left hand. And if I put a bunch of circles on your left hand, that means that you have an inner mission. If I have a bunch of them on your right hand, then you're on an outer mission, right? So take all the ones that have a spiritual purpose of being the head of the Red Cross, the vice president of the Red Cross, and their life doesn't matter the war situation, no matter the political agenda, they're here to help. They're here to create a better quality of life. Now you take this guy, and he made the first underwater car for James Bond, right? That's the guy that did the architecture for that.
That's cool. That's a cool gig, eh? That's amazing.
So 2 different lives, right? So what I did for the last 14 years is I would get celebrities like Ben Stiller or Keira Knightley or Eminem, or, I didn't care about celebrity after a point. I wanted to find the people that were amazing at what they did. And I would get their fingerprints and I would give it to the International Institute of Hand Analysis. And there I would say, who do you have? Right? And so they would guess, okay, what we have is a guy who loves nature by his hand, and he's got a wave right here. But he's got waves all over his fingerprints. The guy loves people. He's got waves.
Wow.
He's a people person.
Absolutely.
But he likes being out in nature, and he's a leader because he's got a circle in the area of the index finger, which is in the right hand, which is about power. His life purpose is being a visionary leader, leading people out in where he loves. This hand is an earth hand, which is a total down to earth hand. So he's in the Maldives. He spent over 3,000 hours underwater.
Now, when people actually come to see you for their consultations, though, they're not coming from that space of buoyancy necessarily. They're coming because actually they want some insight to help them get unstuck and move forward with their lives. And so it'd be great to hear some experience actually of those experiences. How you've taken somebody through maybe a tricky period, and really how, you know, what came afterwards. Did life flourish? Was there a bit of a transitional period? What kind of happened?
So thank you for asking that. It's a great question, right?
And just to add, because
Yeah.
sometimes when we understand something about ourselves, and maybe it might even trigger, it might at first be quite uncomfortable, you know, and that can also cause a situation afterwards as well. So it's just interesting to hear that process with the people you work with.
So before we even I even begin to answer that, you have, if you're listening right now, you have to be able to listen from a particular place. The place is, what is your problem? Right? What are you struggling with today? What is something that you are really wanting to have a breakthrough, that you have been feeling, my God, this person I married, I can't get it, or I can't marry, could be that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I am into sound healing and I would love to get paid for it. Can't get this ship off the ground. I would love to be able to break through and be able to provide for my family. Or I love my family and I need to go and travel. I can't handle them, right? Whatever your problem is, and I guarantee you there are 10,000, right? So this 4 examples that I made are just, you know, scratching the surface. But get into your problem before I even get into this answer that you gave me. So you must be able to feel your problem. What is the problem of that you wake up to every day, and this is not going away? And the problems I like to deal with are not the ones that you're dealing with short term. I'm talking about something that you've had for more than 3 months. In other words, how do I break through in my business, right? We're talking about a life pattern here, right? How do I find my soul partner? How do I've worked with several multimillionaires, and how do I take a very busy business and try to find life balance with my family, right? And make that meaningful and not something as a sacrifice, right? Those are real juicy little problems.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. Yeah.
So to be able to get into someone's problem allows me to then look and see how are the fingerprints related to that. So if you can recall what I was just talking about, that you have these like circles or waves, and it's all relative, right? You have to be able to look at all the fingerprints and see what is like your big turn on, right? Maybe you don't have circles, who cares? Maybe you have just waves compared to nothing but arches, right? But those waves are the areas where you're like, yay, this is where I want to go. What about the rest? Well, now you're talking about the area where you experience a traditional pain. You traditionally feel struggle in this area. Now, the great news is that some people like you with the same fingerprint pattern experience the exact same struggle. And I don't care if you're Dustin Hoffman or you're Tony Robbins or you're John Lennon.
Yeah.
You will have, based on that fingerprint pattern, the same problem. In other words, some people never feel enough. Some people can't talk about the elephant in the living room. Some people feel that they're always separate and they have, like John Lennon, right? Or they feel a constant insecurity. Tony Robbins, I've read his hands twice. Some people feel like they feel very isolated. Right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So Einstein, for example.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Right? Here, and you look at his fingerprint.
Yeah.
Right. But what you can see out of these very famous examples is an evolutionary path. what you have to accept first before I go into this topic
Mm.
is that we are evolving.
I absolutely agree. We are evolving.
We're not stuck here. We're evolving.
We
That
are
means that
indeed.
as difficult as your situation is,
Mm.
you are evolving. And out of that, I can show you and reassure you that no matter what problem you have, I can give you the psychology of how to evolve. In other words, there is a conscious evolution
Mm.
to what you're going through. What is conscious evolution? That sounds like woo-woo fairy stuff. But you have to consider that feelings do evolve. And you're in an epigenetic river that you inherited from upstream. Okay? That fingerprints are epigenetic, which means that if you can associate a life pattern to a fingerprint, you can recognize whatever great grandpa and his boundary issues.
That's right. Yeah.
You're probably going to be feeling it the same way. And I can show you how to encompass the consciousness of greatness and good boundaries and healthy. And by the way, I'm not inventing this.
No, yeah.
All you have to do is look at these people who have really made a breakthrough. Tony Robbins, by the way, let's go back to him.
Yeah.
That man was really insecure at the very beginning. And he had real big trust issues of lying and being able to, he was exaggerating in order to make his thing. Is he still doing it today? You bet. All right. You bet he is. All right. And to a degree, he's conscious of it.
Yeah.
But I want to assure you that that whole program, thank God that he went through that level of insecurity and that distrust, because he developed a phenomenal program. Now, I'm not selling Tony Robbins, but I went through what he did and I was like, this makes a lot of sense. I had a phenomenal year. I went to Seychelles, married, the same thing. I had a great year thanks to his psychology. But it's through his weakness that he developed and evolved.
I absolutely, I've seen that also, in my own work, in teaching and clients that I work with as well, and also prior to training in Ayurveda, I was a business journalist, so I spent many years interviewing the CEOs and all the top guys and running all these big companies. And a lot of what you're saying, it's making me think back to those times now as well, and actually that blueprint, and actually how I can kind of marry that now to to their energy, to what was driving them, that, like you say, that purpose, and also how this would have helped. Because one of the things I think that sort of took me on my healing path and holistic path was also, I interviewed over 80 MDs in a country, and over 4 year time, that was a hell of a lot of MDs.
Yeah, you bet.
A few prime ministers, and some of the
prime ministers.
Wow. Yeah, it was a good mix, and
very
but
powerful people.
As I moved into healing and something was shifting and changing in me, I'll tell you what, Brent, I used to sometimes I'd walk out of an interview and I'd actually sort of have this yearning to not want to nurture them. I felt there was that sort of element was missing, because they were so gung-ho on this world, that this path that they were. And again, as you said, actually, in some of those circumstances, often it can be the relationship that gets sacrificed somewhat, because they're be constantly at work. That's just one example. I had many years of that, so that's something I've seen and been around. But this experience of the person, I think it's almost like you pull the curtains off. It's like we often hear peeling the layers away, but there is an element of peeling the layers away as you take someone through this process.
And I just want to speak to that just for
Yeah.
2 minutes. So
Mm.
you're nailing it, right? Because you know, when you interview all these people, you recognize that they're, you know, they're blind in certain areas, and when you open them up, then they feel like, oh well, why didn't I see that before? We all have it, by the way. And
Yes,
so
absolutely.
when I say that you're here to evolve, I can tell you, just look at your life. You have evolved faster in certain periods and slower in others, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so why is that, right? You know this for a fact that you have evolved to where that means the experience has become more elated, feeling a sense of fun, love, fulfillment. And then there's other areas you went flat, and you may have gone backwards. Okay, so I want to show you something.
Mm.
The people that go through this process go through a deep transformation and they evolve faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she had pancreatic whatever
Mm.
inflammation,
Mm.
but now look at her now.
Mm.
You have this guy who is wanted to kill himself. He literally said that, and he couldn't take it with his kids. He's a father. Look at him now.
Mm.
He became younger.
Mm.
So all these people that you're seeing here are able, she had back problems and inflammation and stress disorders, and now look at her. She's
Mm.
elated, right?
Mm.
Abuse problems,
Mm.
depression,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Look how beautiful she is. Did I make her work out more? Right?
Yeah.
So all these
There's a
people,
radiance. There's a
they're radiant, right? And
yeah.
so all I want to say is that they evolved in about 28 days.
Yeah.
And how they did that is I show them the map how to evolve. You just need to know what your consciousness map is. And then I show you, take these steps and you're going to rock it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Take another 10 years.
The same as anything, absolutely. And because it takes time to build up a new habit as well and engage in and get back into that flow. So and I know we're going to do a little just a sort of a short analysis of my hands, just to
Sure,
show
you bet.
you this. But I just wanted to ask you, there was, because I just wanted to also ask you about, we talked about this on email, that actually my father, when he got engaged to my mother, he'd had a palmistry reading, and the palmist had said, great, good marriage, good match, said all the right things, and you're going to have 4 kids, and you're going to have 4 boys. And so I rocked up with it. He had that information still in his head, and then my 3 sisters rocked up. So 4 girls. So I just, that's something that sometimes people go to. They have gone to, say, palmistry, to get some maybe some real detail actually on things that they may experience in their life. What's your opinion of that?
Well, I think that was a very smart decision to go to a palmist before you get married, because when you are looking at somebody's biological pattern, if you're with us so far, you recognize, yes, we're reading your life pattern. And if you can see your wife's or your husband's life pattern or a potential partner, and you can recognize that the problem that they will deal with is a problem that you will deal with.
Good. That's good.
Then you'll start to recognize that this is a problem you're going to have for the rest of your life if you commit to that, right? So that's worth knowing. I did not read my wife's fingerprints until I decided to finally, get engaged. But before that, I was very happily blind. And even then, intellectually, I knew it, but I hadn't experienced it, right? So I can even tell you it, and you're like, I'm in love. It doesn't matter. He's amazing. But when I tell you this, you have to understand that where I was 10 years ago. and where I am today, I've evolved quite accurate in my interpretation of life pattern for your partner. And even then, I had it down to where I could tell you exactly what I was going to go through. Has it been a ride? You bet. It's been a roller coaster ride. And I can tell you exactly where it was because it's the same thing I said on the train ride with my wife across the country. And so the other thing is that people come to me when they do partner readings. It's a partner reading, and they come for two reasons. Number one, they want to understand their partner. Doesn't mean that their partner wants to have a hand analysis, by the way. It means they want, as a woman, they want to figure him out and be able to find some synergy of how this could work, because there are times when it totally doesn't. Second is that you can look at potential partners and find an ideal partner for you. You can look at their what is called the heart line, and the heart line is developed when the baby shows their first facial expression at 10 weeks in the womb, right? Before you can bend your hands, you get this line. And the more it goes upward, like Beyonce, the more animated in your emotions are. So these people are very intense and they're very excitable. Other people are pretty cool, right? You tell the Dalai Lama that your credit card did not work in line, you had to borrow money from the people behind you, and there was a baby screaming, and you had to go and weigh the lettuce and you know, he would just look at you. Why are you telling me this story? What do you need? Other people, when you tell them the story, like Oprah Winfrey, she makes it into a talk show. She loves that you tell and then what happened? And the baby was crying, and then what happened, right? So her heart line, like Will Smith, they want to get into your story. That is not a facial expression that the Dalai Lama would ever make in his entire life, right? So, and then other people, when I read Ben, he is exactly as you see in all of the movies, right? He's just analytical, and you know, some people make a different talk show host, David Letterman, right? Or Jennifer Aniston from Friends, or Julia Roberts, very famous people. And you look at their heart line, they're super controlling.
Are they? Very interesting. Very interesting.
Does that help for a relationship?
And it's interesting to hear you say that it is a good thing to come in at that time in your life as well. And I can completely see I think the attraction to doing it together. I think it's a really nice thing to do together because, you know, and also it opens up a whole space of new conversation, potentially, that, you know, that maybe hasn't, you know, that you haven't explored in your, you know, relationship up until that point. So
particularly the shadow side, right? So everything is a double-edged sword, right? So the fingerprints are showing your blind spot, but what about you as a person, right? So if you have a highly intellectual hand, what do you think that will be as a blind spot? That means you're going to be constantly like Jodie Foster, right? She's constantly like always, you know, analytical and rational. What's her blind spot? Where is she in her body? Where is she on the ground? Where is she? Can she be here nourishing and supportive, or she's always going to be like this in a knowledge frame? That's useful.
It's very useful. It's very useful. It's very useful. Absolutely. 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 Because also it gives time then to also explore just some different, you know, even coping mechanisms for the different aspects of the personality as well. And And
coping
yeah.
and acceptance.
And acceptance, yeah, which is also what Ayurveda does, because, I remember prior to having knowing nothing about it and getting quite frustrated about certain individuals, in my family or, in my close vicinity. And actually, since walking this path and now being able to look at people from their constitution, I'm so much more accepting, because I'm able to say, well, look, okay, that's happened today, but tomorrow's another day, and actually their energy will shift, or coming from the perspective of, well, actually knowing that maybe they are more, there's more earth there and they feel a little bit more stuck at the moment, and that's okay, and they need a bit more support and maybe a bit more, nurturing in that way. So it's opened up a whole new way of being with the people I love, that are nearest and dearest to me. And I feel with what you do, Brent, it's the same, it's the same path. So I'm conscious of time. Shall we just, we're just going to explore some of the lines on my hand so that people can get a bit of an idea, maybe do a top level kind of analysis of their own. So I'll hand over to you. I know you've got them, however you want to do this.
Sure. Right. So, let's make this valuable for your audience and try to relate and have them look at the different, lines and different aspects of the hand and see if this is something to help them understand their life pattern.
Yeah.
Remember, I'm not reading you. I'm reading your life. And in other words, that the people that go through this process with me are transforming, not them. They're transforming their entire life. That means they're transforming their sister and their brother and their father. They're transforming everything. That's how you transform your life. You don't just work on a skill.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. No, it's the whole, it's all aspects. It's all aspects, it's all aspects. And, and as you talk, I really feel like it's like, we can have a certain perception, can't we? We have a certain perception of ourselves and our life. And maybe for many, we accept that that's just the way it's going to be, that actually no shift can take place, or you might feel restricted, but not sure where to go or where to look, or or maybe this kind of content that we're sharing here hasn't come into your sphere yet. But this is all about, this is connecting to very much to source, and getting that flow going with ease. Just getting that flow going with ease, which then automatically has a ripple effect on all those other aspects of your life. So, good.
So, if you look at, I'm sharing right now. Do you see what I'm sharing?
I do, yeah.
Great. This is your hand, right? Now, what can we say about this hand? The woman has short fingers. Let's act as if Sunita is not in the room, right? She's got short fingers. If you copy and paste these fingers down to the palm, they stop about right here, right? And there's some funny lines that are going through here, right? There's a separation here, and there is a looks like a pretty tall middle finger. And what is this? You have a fingerprint, but down in the base of your palm. I bet some of your listeners will have a fingerprint down in their palm.
Yeah, probably a lot of my students. Yeah, there's
a spiritual region.
Yeah, I mean, the students that get, so one element of my work is teaching therapists and body workers. So there's over 1,000 of them.
Wow.
Majority are on a spiritual path. Yeah.
So let's take this chronologically, right? When you zoom in to your fingerprints, you'll see that there is a circle on your right index finger, right? And so I put it on a map here. Oh, wait, let's go back. All right. So I put it on the map. So rather than you try to decipher what the fingerprints are, you can just look here and you can see on the top right. Let's see if I can get there. All right. This is my cartoon version of your fingerprints. That means that on the thumb, on the right thumb, you have a wave. On the left thumb, you have a wave. Right, this is the right hand and left hand. In the right index finger, you have a circle. And the circle is way more powerful than the index finger. But either way, we have a lot of going on here of the circle being on the power and S. It's called the composite whirl on your left index. And that shows that overall, we have a woman who is very powerful and she's attracted to power. MDs, right?
There you go.
In the area of worth, we have a bit of a story about how did she reclaim her worth? How did she understand her value out in the world? This is an area where I would hit you hard, like an anvil and a hammer, about what do you think is your expression of the greatest value? I'll go back to that. But I want to give you a tip here. The richest man I ever met had the same fingerprint pattern right there. And that was his biggest struggle. I was in a palace with him as he was struggling with outer worth, outer value. The right middle finger is all about outer value. The left middle finger is about self-worth. So far, it's okay. This one, outer value. It means we have a bit of a responsibility, value, integrity issue out in the world. That's a lifelong struggle. In the area of the ring finger, we have art or creativity. In the left ring finger, it's almost like a circle. So you're like Miles Davis. You want to do something innovative. Right ring finger, it's okay. Just a wave. I love it. And then the left pinky and right pinky is just a wave. So you have waves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That means you love a lot.
Oh, good. Yes.
So when you organize people by fingerprints, you're going to recognize that those people who have a lot of waves, 6 or more, are definitely in a different story than other people. And you might be lucky that you have 6 or more of these waves. That's a wave, by the way. Let's just zoom in. You see the wave? Goes up and down. Thank you for the party. I'm out the door. Great party. Right? So all these people have a really strong urge to connect to you emotionally. Loving, connecting, vulnerable. If you have 6 or more, you get to play at the card table. You're at this place here.
Yeah.
What about the rest of human population? Well, let's just take all the people with a bunch of circles. And if you have 4 or more circles, then you can't just go jogging. You got to be a triathlete, right? You can't
Mm.
be just an engineer. You got to build the biggest tunnel in Switzerland and so forth. You can't be just Tony. You got to be Tony Robbins and so forth. I'm not going to teach you everything about hand analysis, but I can tell you, just like I was explaining, that there's different breeds of people and different soul paths. You can literally organize people by soul pattern. And you have a soul pattern of love, which means that all these people, love is their rocket fuel. Second is that when you look at all the people where the circle is on the right index finger, then you recognize that those people, what's the finger, the right index finger that you point? That's the area of power and vision. And Richard Branson has a circle on his right index finger. He's all about power and leadership. Now, you might have a wave on this finger, and all the rest of them are something else. So we have to look at what is the highest expression. Look at water, right? We're not judging a big wave is better. We're just saying that there's a wave here and there's nothing else. That means that this area is powerful for you. You get a lot of meaning and you get turned on by recognizing vision, power, confidence. And that means that you will have a broader vocabulary in this area of leadership, visionary, and greatness than other people. You have more distinctions. It's kind of like a scientist, you know? I look at a frog and I see a frog, but a scientist would see that this particular frog is from Africa and, you know, da-da-da-da-da. It's a female frog and da-da-da-da. I just see a frog, right? You have a great amount of distinctions in the area of power, and this goes for everyone. Wherever your circle is, you have a high amount of consciousness and you're elevated. That means that wherever you go into this area, you will feel naturally elated. All the serotonin, all the dopamine, no drugs needed, no coffee needed. Do this, you're made to have a happy life.
So it's back to flow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, you also have another interesting circle on the left ring finger, and the ring finger is the area of creativity. If you have a circle on your right ring finger, which you don't, you would be like meant to be on stage. But when I look at what you have, this guy, Miles Davis, had inner creativity, inner recognition, inner insight. So he was about applause and recognition for what he had invented. I was reading 200 people at TEDx. Right? So they brought me in. I had a $30,000 booth, and I was reading 200 people in the audience, almost everybody. And in that time, you would think, if you were standing in my seat, you would think that everyone from humanity must have a circle on their left ring finger. It's not true. I just happened to be at the right conference where innovation is needed. If I was at the family conference and I look at a bunch of people with a left thumb circles, I guarantee you, example after example, I would see all those people are philanthropists or trying to create a sense of home or belonging. But you have this innovation. This guy would get angry if you applauded too much. He just wants you to recognize he spent literally half his year in a basement or the attic, and he came up with this piece, and he created a problem on stage, and he wants you to understand how he resolved it. And isn't it amazing?
Yeah, I relate to that.
Right? That's you. So when you put those together, you're a visionary who is bringing out innovation. That's your life purpose. And you're in a love story. whether you like it or not.
Yes, yes. No, well, it's interesting because that has come up in some other things I've explored, some other systems I've explored. That's definitely the common theme. So it's good. It's ticked your boxes as well, Brent. Yeah, absolutely.
So
very interesting.
People may have different ones, right? You might have a circle. I guarantee there's some healers listening. You might have a circle on your left pinky. You might have a circle on your left index, and on and on. But what I want you to understand is you don't need drugs.
I think that's the message.
You have everything in you that if you go into these experiences, you will feel touched, moved, and inspired. That as you saw those people from the before and after photo that looked like they became younger, that seems unreal, right?
Yeah.
Some of these people, they went through quite a dramatic reversal, right? Like this guy.
Yes.
And it looks like this guy is the son of him. Right?
Absolutely.
It looks like he went backwards. He went like a bad divorce and went an alcoholic and whatever.
Yeah.
What I want you to understand here about fingerprints is that they reveal a stress disorder that you have. And when I can help you identify what your distress disorder is, and I guess you're a smart person, you recognize that stress ages, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we look at that also again in Ayurveda. We've got one of the constitutions, Vata, is if I'm working with any pure Vata constitutions, that's my big message to them, is that self-care, have a regular routine, because that constitution tends to be the one that can get very stressed and therefore age,
sure, if you're
quickly. Yeah.
If you're a Taoist, you would say Jing energy.
Yeah.
But in all cases, stress ages you. But what most people haven't understood is that if you release stress, especially biological stress, you release your own age, which means that these people that I'm helping are getting another 10 years of their life.
And you can see it. I mean, you can see it through.
Oh,
yeah.
And so you have to ask, I mean, I'm charging $250 for a reading. What is it worth to have 10 years of your life? What's your value on that? Right? And it's not something I want you to believe. I want you to see it for yourself and understand the mechanism of how stress is within your body, and that which I've described here is all revealed. And if you look at the people who have had a lifelong stress, right? Shyness. Einstein was mute and ignored. He published his papers. You don't think that was a stress for him to publish his papers, and he was ignored for 5 years, and he was ignored in the same way that he was at 5 years old. The man did not speak until he was 7 years old. He was isolated, and every relationship that he had until he was 50, he did not have intimacy. That's a stress. Release that stress, you get a beautiful place in your life. All right.
Wow. Well, I think there's some really good, there's just some really good basic things that I think anyone watching this, snippets of information that people can take away. Watch the session again, have a look at what you've said, relate it to your own hands. I love all the information on the different categories as well, and how that also relates to the whole system. But I guess the biggest message is that this is a tool to grow. This is a tool to get in touch with yourself. This is a tool to, if something's, if you're tired of pushing something down, this is that opportunity to really embody yourself, express yourself, and explore this new territory of consciousness. Because I guess, I'd imagine once somebody goes through a whole 2-hour session with you, that's a lot of information to take in. So there must be a bit of a process, where you let that settle, because if you're told something that maybe you really know deep inside, but you've never really faced it before, but you kind of know. And then you share that with them and you actually show them, show the client, exactly how it's showing up. The intellect wants to kind of control that information first, so you have to just embody it. And I can imagine it might take a few days, it might even take a few weeks, it might take longer sometimes for that information to process, but there's a shift taking place every time. And that's ultimately where the awareness
being able to understand your life pattern and have somebody who has no agenda.
Yeah.
And whether it's your partner hand or your hand, I have no agenda. And I'm showing you something that you have struggled with your whole life, right? Something of your greatest fear.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, if you go 2% in that direction, you are going to realize 100% in your life purpose. So that's the formula that the Institute of Hand Analysis has figured out.
Yeah, great.
You go into that weakest link and you create outer value. Let's use you as an example. And you learn to be more gentle in responsibility and go into the area of value and creating value for other people. Then your life purpose shows up. If it doesn't, then your whole life is just feeling guilt in the outer world. And
because ultimately the inside of your soul wants to go out and play in that way. If that's ultimately the soul's calling, then those feelings are never actually going to go away. And I relate to all of that and more. There's a transition certainly taking place in the visibility of all my work at the moment, and having published my first book during lockdown, and and all of the craziness going on around that, and sort of elevating that. So nice to see it. Nice to see it on the hands.
Do you have a partner as well?
I don't. No. Yeah. That's been an area of I'd love to do more work around that.
Well, you're certainly in a love story. So and here's the thing, either you're in it or you're not, but you're in a love story. So the need is there.
Yes. Yeah.
And that would bring a supernova power for you.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Just look back in the chapters when you had it, and you'll recognize that was a supernova. So just imagine that, and it's not something to believe.
Yeah.
I'm having you connect to that moment in your life and then bring it forth in your life and recognize how important that is.
Yes, absolutely. No, yes, it's something, but it's, I think also it's, as you move, certainly as I've moved more in this arena and the world of transformation and healing, and I'm surrounded by an awful lot of women, a lot of women and not a lot of men. So
I understand.
I think it's opportunity as well, but yes, hopefully walking towards me as we speak. But Brent, that was really fantastic. Thank you so much. And I know we've spent a bit longer on the session than we'd initially said, so I appreciate that. And now, so as I'm going to wrap up now.
I got plenty of time for you. So.
But before we do, I want to make sure that all the listeners know about about how to get in touch with you, so your social media handles, and also very kindly you are giving us a coupon code for $50 off a 2-hour reading with you. So if you would like to take Brent up on that, then you simply need to be in touch with him and just share the coupon code, which is Healing Shift 2022. And how do they get in touch with you?
Right. So go to www.thepowerinyourhands.com. There you can contact me. You have I'm happy to answer questions, or just book I would say book a half hour or a 2-hour. If you trust me, I can give you the whole life pattern, create a diagram for you. That's 2 hours. Or if you don't trust me and you're trying to figure it out, you're curious about this, do a half hour. And if you book the 2-hour, then you can apply that coupon code, which we'll post here.
Yeah, we put it up.
And then you'll get $50 off. And that way I know where you're coming from. You're coming from Sunita, and then I understand that you're coming from a deep Ayurvedic knowledge as well. And that's useful for me, because then we can have a little bit of a deeper conversation around that territory. I happen to know a few things around that area that would help you. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And yeah, we'll post this up with all the links. Make sure you get everything. And thank you again, Brent.
You're very welcome. And thank you. You have great questions, and clearly you have a strong, powerful soul. So I'm happy to be in your